You really wore that." She didn't whisper it. She said it under her breath, but loud enough for the three people near the bar to glance over. I stood there in a button-up I ironed twice, shoes I polished for no reason, and a tie I practiced for 20 minutes. Her tone cut deeper than anything Wesley would say later. But I didn't respond. I just nodded like a fool and followed her into the glow of her company's annual event like a kid being dragged to school. The ballroom was pulsing with noise, light bouncing off glass, laughter bouncing off walls. Her co-workers hugged each other like they'd survived a war, and everyone had that look-at-me glow. I tried to blend in. I really did. But the moment Callie let go of my arm, I vanished. She didn't introduce me to anyone. She didn't even look back. I stood near the ice sculpture, watching it melt. Someone had carved a phoenix into it. Ironic. Everything around me was rising. I was shrinking. And then he appeared. Wesley, like a commercial for expensive cologne. Hair that probably had its own agent, suit tailored within an inch of its life, voice smooth like he'd never once been told no. He wrapped his arm around Callie's waist like it belonged there, like it had been there. She didn't flinch, didn't step away, just tilted her head and smiled. "Derek, right?" he said, smirking as he turned to me. "Daryl, right, Daryl. Sorry, man." He didn't sound sorry. "You work in something IT-ish?" I nodded. "Cool. Hey, no offense, but you look like you could use a drink." He gestured to the bar. "They've got this bourbon that's, like, $12 a drop." I declined. He grinned wider. Keeping a clear head. Smart. That's what they say in your world, right?" I wanted to disappear into the carpet. Then Callie laughed. Loud. Too loud. At a joke I didn't hear, or maybe just ignored. They turned their backs. Both of them. So I walked away. I pretended to need the bathroom, but really I just stood by the hallway, staring at the wall, wondering if I was being dramatic, wondering if I imagined her fingers sliding down his sleeve when he touched her shoulder. But the universe has a cruel way of answering doubts. Because when I pulled out my phone to check the time, a text lit up the screen, sent 2 minutes ago. From Callie. "He's being weird again. Just act normal." And it wasn't to me. It was to Wesley. I stared at that text like it had punched me in the chest. My wife, messaging another man at her own work event about me. Not just messaging, mocking. I wasn't even worth a real insult. I was an afterthought, an obstacle to her evening. I didn't even react at first. I just stood in that hallway like I was buffering. People walked by laughing, drinks clinking. Someone bumped my shoulder and mumbled sorry. I was invisible again, like I'd been all night. And the longer I stood there, the more that stupid message kept burning behind my eyes. "He's being weird again. Just act normal." I read it 3 more times. Then I did something I didn't know I had the courage to do. I opened her phone. Before anyone jumps on me about privacy, listen, this wasn't snooping for fun. This was a drowning man grabbing for anything that would tell him which way was up. And what I saw when I clicked their thread, it was like watching the back half of a movie when you'd missed the whole beginning. Except I knew I was the joke the whole time. They had nicknames for me. Tech Dad. The Beige Ghost. There were photos. Screenshots of our texts. Him replying with skull 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 when she sent him a message I wrote asking her what time I should pick her up. There was a meme of a mannequin in a polo shirt. She'd captioned it, "Date night with Daryl." And there was something worse. Much worse. A video. Taken from her camera roll. 2 weeks ago. Callie sitting on our couch, pretending to be on the phone with me. Doing this over-the-top voice. Mocking me. Whining. "Do you think we could watch that space documentary again tonight? The one about the moon's erosion patterns?" Then she and Wesley just laughed off camera. I felt sick. I wanted to confront her. Right then. In front of all of them. But I didn't. Something in me went quiet. I just slipped her phone back into her purse and walked calmly back into the ballroom like nothing happened. I even smiled when someone passed me a glass of champagne. Because in that moment, I realized something I never had before. They all thought I was weak. Harmless. Forgettable. Which meant none of them would see it coming when I finally decided to do something about it. I left without saying a word. Not to her. Not to anyone. Just nodded politely at the valet, handed over the ticket, and drove off into the cold night with her laughter still echoing in my head. It was like my body was on autopilot, but my mind was crystal clear. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was just done. Whatever string had held me together snapped clean. And for once, I didn't try to tie it back. At home, the silence welcomed me like an old friend. No notifications. No interruptions. Just me, a half-eaten frozen pizza in the fridge, and a very dangerous calm settling over everything. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, running the messages over in my head. Not because I needed to. No. I remembered every word already, but because I was dissecting them, mapping their timeline, connecting dots she thought I'd never find. By sunrise, I had made 3 decisions. 1. I wasn't confronting her. Not yet. 2. I was going to gather everything. Proof, names, dates, patterns. I wanted the entire landscape of her betrayal before she even suspected I'd started digging. And 3. I was going to get out before she could trap me with a smile and say, "Can we talk?" Like none of it ever happened. That morning, she came home just before 8 a.m. Her makeup was cleaned off, her hair up like she'd slept comfortably somewhere. She kicked off her heels and walked into the kitchen like nothing was off. "You left early," she said casually, pouring herself a glass of orange juice. I wasn't feeling great, I replied. Calm, even, unshaken. She gave me a weak little smile. "You're not mad, right?" I didn't even get a chance to say goodbye. I shook my head. No big deal. But here's the thing. While she sipped juice like a sitcom wife, I had already emailed myself every photo, every video, every message from her phone. I'd set up cloud backups, created copies, compiled timelines. I was building a digital iceberg, cold, silent, and 10 times larger than anything she saw coming. Later that afternoon, she fell asleep on the couch. I sat at the dining table pretending to scroll through emails while watching her. I don't know why. Maybe I was waiting for the guilt to hit, or the heartbreak, but all I felt was clarity. She'd broken something she thought I didn't care about. But she was wrong. I cared. I just didn't care the way she wanted me to. I wasn't going to scream or cry or beg. I was going to vanish. And when I did, she wouldn't even have the chance to say sorry. Because by the time I was done, she'd be talking to lawyers, not me. She always told me I was too careful, too quiet, too slow to react. But that's exactly why she never saw what I was really doing while she binge-watched her crime dramas on the couch, legs folded under her, phone buzzing beside her thigh. That Monday afternoon, while she was working from home and I was taking a mental health day, I was parked outside an office building 2 towns over. Nothing fancy, no signs on the windows, just a law firm name that didn't show up on Yelp or Google. I found them on a private forum for tech professionals, one of those places people go when things go very, very wrong. Inside, a man named Ellis shook my hand without smiling. He wasn't a divorce lawyer. Not exactly. He called himself a transition specialist. Said he handled quiet exits and contingency planning for people who didn't want to blow up their lives in public. People like me. I gave him the flash drive I'd prepared. He plugged it in, flipped through a few files, raised one eyebrow slightly, and said, "You did your homework." "No," I said. "She did. I just organized it." Over the next hour, we built a strategy. Not a messy, emotional one. Nothing she could twist back into a pity narrative. No angry confrontations. No Facebook rants. Just facts. Cold, clear, and time-stamped. He showed me how to gather financial records without tripping alerts, how to open new accounts in my name only, how to redirect paycheck deposits into places she didn't know existed. He told me something I'll never forget. The most powerful moves are the ones your opponent doesn't even know you made. When I got back home, Callie was on a video call, laughing with someone from her team. I passed behind her, and she didn't even mute to say hi. Just shot me a 2-second glance and went back to praising someone's graphics. That night, while she was asleep, I made copies of our marriage certificate, her employment contract, and the car lease she co-signed but never read. I sent backup files to Ellis. I changed the password on my phone. I called the bank and removed her from the emergency access line. She kept saying I was too careful. She never realized that's what would cost her everything. Because in a few days, I wouldn't be careful anymore. I thought Wesley was the problem. The main one, anyway. And I was ready to deal with that. I'd accepted that he'd been in her texts, her photos, her jokes. But what I wasn't ready for, what cracked something deeper in me, was realizing that he wasn't the first. Or the only. While going through the backups from her phone, I found something Ellis had warned me might happen. If she's gotten comfortable lying once, he said, there's usually a pattern. I didn't want to believe that. I still had this fragile, broken-down version of Callie in my head. The woman who got nervous before every job interview. who held my hand too tight on flights, who used to leave notes in my lunchbox during our first year of marriage. But that version was already gone. Had been for a while. And what I found proved it. There was another thread. Buried in a hidden app she thought no one would notice. A private messenger under a fake shopping icon. It was all there. A second man. His name was Cole. Not someone from her office. Not even from her city. But she'd met up with him. There were plane tickets, receipts for hotel rooms in Chicago, restaurant bookings for business travel that matched her calendar. I went numb. Again. Wesley was the public risk. Cole was the hidden sin. And me? I was the wallpaper. The safe backdrop she could lean against while she lived two separate lives. But here's where it gets strange. Cole wasn't just some stranger. After some digging, I realized I'd seen him before. At our wedding. He was one of her friends from college. One I thought had disappeared years ago. There was even a photo of him in one of our old albums, standing a few feet behind us, holding a beer, smiling like he knew something I didn't. That night, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in almost a year, Callie's former best friend, Simone. They'd had a falling out last spring, and Callie claimed it was over jealousy. But something in Simone's voice, when I told her why I was calling, told me she'd been waiting for this day. I didn't know if you'd ever wake up, she said quietly. I didn't know what she meant, until she sent me a folder. Screenshots, dates, emails, and a voicemail. It was from 2 years ago. Callie drunk, laughing, bragging. He thinks I'm on a work trip. I'm not even sorry. He's just background noise now. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there, in my home, our home, and stared at the walls she'd decorated with photos of us. She'd built a museum to a marriage that no longer existed, and I was the last one to find out I was just a mannequin in the display. But not for much longer. The thing about revenge, real revenge, is that it doesn't come with fireworks. No shouting. No throwing her suitcase onto the lawn. It just happens. Quietly. In the background. And by the time the person realizes what's going on, it's already too late to stop it. It started small. I shut off her access to the shared cloud drive. She thought it was a glitch. I watched her restart her phone twice, grumbling to herself like the internet had personally wronged her. She called IT support at her office. They told her the issue wasn't on their end. I had already migrated the important files elsewhere. Everything I wanted backed up, texts, call logs, photos, receipts, were now sitting in a private archive under a new name she'd never guess. Next, the bank accounts. I didn't close anything. I didn't need to. I just redirected. My paycheck started landing in a new solo account. I left the joint one looking full, until she tried to transfer money for a last-minute spa weekend. The app told her insufficient funds. She didn't say anything to me that night, but she checked her phone 5 times during dinner. Then came the real move. She came home from work one evening, tossing her keys in the bowl like always. She was smiling, probably because Wesley had sent her some meaningless heart emoji. I was sitting at the dining table, sorting through fake tax documents I had spread out just for show. She walked past me toward the bedroom and stopped. The door was locked. She jiggled the handle. Daryl? I looked up calmly. It's locked. No kidding. She laughed, trying the knob again. Why? I waited. Just a beat longer than normal. Then answered. Because I changed the locks. That was it. That one sentence. She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Wait, what are you talking about? I stood, grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair, and walked toward the door without rushing. Everything you need is in the guest room. You can sleep there tonight. Excuse me? I turned to face her. Check your phone. She looked. I saw her thumb hover, then freeze. Her mouth opened slightly. Then her eyes met mine. You're spying on me? No. I'm watching my life. And you're not part of it anymore. I walked out before she could say anything else. I didn't yell. I didn't throw guilt. I didn't ask her why. Because I already knew. I knew everything. And now, so did she. That night, she didn't sleep in the guest room. She left. Took her car. I watched her taillights disappear down the street, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt free. But it wasn't over. Not yet. 2 days after she left the house, she started texting me like nothing had happened. Not even pretending to be apologetic. No, she led with attitude. First it was, we need to talk like adults. Then, I don't know what game you're playing, but it's not cute. And finally, I want to come back and get my things. You're not locking me out of my own life. Her own life. That phrase stuck with me. It wasn't our life. It hadn't been for a long time. And now, for the first time, she was the one on the outside. She hated that. Because she wasn't just losing me. She was losing the version of me she could manipulate. The quiet guy. The placeholder. The one she once bragged about outgrowing. The next morning, she showed up. No warning. No knock. Just the sharp sound of her key jamming into the front door, followed by nothing. Because, of course, it didn't work anymore. I watched her from the upstairs window, standing there with her phone in one hand and a coffee in the other, the confusion turning to frustration like clockwork. She called. I let it ring. She called again. Then again. I finally picked up on the fourth call, not because I wanted to hear her voice, but because I needed her to hear mine. I told you. I said, you don't live here anymore. You can't just erase me, she snapped. I didn't, I said. You did that yourself. I'm just finishing the paperwork. She laughed bitterly. You really think you can paint me as the villain in this? I don't have to paint anything, I said. You texted the whole story to someone else for months. She went quiet. For once. But I wasn't done. I sent everything to the lawyer. I continued. The messages, the photos, even your flight receipts. You were thorough. I'll give you that. There was another pause. Then a low, calculated question. Did you send it to anyone else? I almost laughed. That was her fear. Not losing the marriage. Not even the house. Just her image. She wanted to control the story, even now. Wanted to find some crack in the foundation where she could squeeze herself back in and flip the script. But I'd taken that from her, too. No, I said. I didn't need to. The story already ends the same way. She stood there for a few more seconds, then turned around and walked to her car. The tires screeched louder than they needed to. That was for effect. I closed the blinds and went back downstairs, where Simone was waiting at the table. Yes, her Simone. The jealous friend she'd cut off a year ago. The one she warned me about. The one who turned out to be the only person willing to tell me the truth when it all fell apart. You okay? Simone asked quietly. I'm getting there, I said. Simone nodded. She's not going to let it go, you know. I'm counting on that. Because the thing about people like Callie, they always come back for one last power play. And I was finally ready for it. She came back one more time, just like I knew she would. This time she wasn't wearing heels or that perfect corporate armor she used to weaponize. She looked tired, smaller somehow, and for the first time since this all started, she knocked. I opened the door, but didn't let her in. I just want to talk, she said quietly, almost like she didn't believe herself. So talk, I said, keeping one hand on the frame. She stood there, eyes scanning the living room behind me like she was still looking for cracks in the story she used to control. But all the photos were gone. All the shared furniture. Even the little shelf she used to clutter with scented candles was empty now. The house had already started letting go of her. I made mistakes, she said, finally. I didn't answer. I didn't think you'd ever actually leave. I don't know. I thought you needed me. That part hurt. Not because it was untrue, but because once, a long time ago, it was. She looked up at me, waiting for a reaction, waiting for something she could grab onto. I gave her nothing. You win, she said after a long pause. You made your point. There was never a game, I replied. You were just never on my team. And that was it. The last real thing either of us said. She left. This time for good. I closed the door, turned off my phone, and walked back into a house that finally felt quiet in a good way. A week later, I signed the final papers. The lawyer called it clean and unarguable. No drama. No drawn-out fights. Just closure. She didn't contest anything. She couldn't. Simone and I didn't become a couple, if that's what you're wondering. We had coffee once more. We talked. She told me I deserved better. I told her she deserved someone who listens. Maybe that's something. Maybe not. But that's not the ending. The ending was last Friday, sitting on a bench near the coast, watching the ocean do its thing, endless and calm, while I breathed without the weight of pretending to be happy for someone who never saw me. And for the first time in years, I wasn't trying to disappear. I was just living. And it turns out, that's better than revenge.